Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I am Sean Barry, and today I am joined by filmmaker, producer, stuntwoman, designer, and actress Natascha Hopkins. Natascha has done stunt work in movies and television for many years, including action blockbusters like Mad Max Fury Road. Fans of the Street Fighter franchise may recognize her for starring as Laura Matsuda in the series Street Fighter Resurrection. Thanks for being on, Natascha.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good. It's finally sunny again in California since it's been so gloomy for a long time.
It has been, yeah. Well, the heat is definitely cranking up.
Yeah.
So, but hey, get the Macy's ready. So, Natascha, as I mentioned, you've done stunt work for many, many years. I guess my first question for you is what initially inspired you to pursue a career in stunts?
Well, to be honest, I moved to LA from Dallas pursuing acting. And when I was on my very first set, it was one-on-one. I saw them do a stunt, and it was kind of simple. Like the car went over the curb, and then the fire hydrant knocked over, the water came out, and then I saw the interaction between the special effects, the stunt coordinator, the director, and the stunt performers, and I was kind of hooked after that because being a gymnast, I was an all-American gymnast, right? But I started when I was 9. So when you graduate or you retire, you kind of have this void. It's not like you're like, hey, let's go do some flips in the street, especially with gymnastics being a little more unique. So when I saw that, I was like, this is great to be able to be part of a team, and you get the adrenaline rush and you get a little anxiety before, and it's dangerous. So I was really lucky to be able to meet people on set. Dartney Bryant, Dee Bryant, she's amazing. She's still doing stunts, but she was one of my mentors. So for me, they were like, okay, well, if she has a background and she trains, and but it wasn't that easy at first. So I was like, I was a gymnast, so like, really, can you do a flip? So I did some flips like in heels, and they're like, oh, okay, she's really a gymnast. So I was able to train and just be like working right away. I was really fortunate. I felt like it was kind of destined. So my journey was kind of accidental, and then I fell in love with it.
Awesome. And it must be crazy because, did you even think like that you would go on to do like so many like stunts as a main profession in your career?
Well, I think when you move to LA from another city, you always think that you're like the big fish. And then you come to LA and it's kind of an awakening, like you're like a
Right.
little fish. So when I first moved out here, I was like, oh, I'm going to be doing big movies, acting. Like, oh, probably take 2 or 3 years. But it's not that simple, like thousands of auditions later. So with stunts, I don't think that I had 2 goals. Well, 3. I always wanted to go through glass. I wanted double Halle Berry, and I wanted to work overseas. So yeah, I'm happy to been able to obtain all those goals, but I kind of went into it blindly. So actually, not in the beginning. I was just really impressed to just be on set, as many times as I was in the beginning of my career.
So it was kind of like a leap of faith for you.
Oh yeah, for sure.
hmm I mean, especially when moving to LA, because LA is, of course, where a lot of movies and TV shows are shot. So, of course, there is still that risk, and it's always, sometimes you don't know if it's going to pay off, but
Yeah.
you just gotta kind of put your foot through the door and then see where it goes from there.
Yeah, exactly.
And over the years, you've done some incredible stunt work, including being doubles for talents like Kerry Washington and Zoe Kravitz. Perfect example is in the film Mad Max Fury Road, you were a stunt double for Zoe Kravitz. So my question is, despite the major risks being taken on, like, say, your experiences on Mad Max Fury Road or any movies you've done stunt work for, do you find the profession of doing stunts rewarding and empowering?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the thing about there are some scenes that I've seen where actors do a really great job and people are clapping and they're like, oh, that was so amazing. But when you're doing stunts and, things are blowing up and it's about timing and really not trusting your instincts because you're going against it. If you're doing near miss with a car, you gotta be there at the final second, so then it reads that you were, hit by the car or whatever. So I think when you're done with the stunt, and then everybody's like, oh my god, that was amazing, it's like, and then you look at playback, and like producers, directors, stunt coordinators happy, like it's immediate gratification. That's really cool. So I feel like it's very empowering. Also, when you're hired as a stunt performer, a lot of coordinators, they don't give you the pass because you're a woman. So in one way, it's highly empowering because you're there. We're all performers. We're gonna do our job. We're gonna kill it, and everyone's gonna be happy. And obviously, there's a safety issue. Where it can be dangerous, but yeah, I absolutely feel like it's empowering. And then when it comes out, then you're like, it's like the second wave of like, wow, I did that. That's gonna be on film forever. So it's really cool.
Right, right. And like you mentioned, it's like you get to see the hard work pay off in the final product. Perfect, like I said, Mad Max Fury Road. That entire movie is pretty much stunts galore on top of, its main storyline. But more impressively, it's not just like there's very minimal CGI in that movie, so it makes like the stunt work, including yours, all the more commendable. And with it being shot in the middle of the desert.
Yeah. It was pretty phenomenal. It actually was very cold,
Oh,
but it was freezing. It was freezing. Like our teeth were shattering. But halfway through shooting, I think we shot for like 6 or 7 months. But Tom Hardy rented a movie theater, and we got to kind of see a little bit of what it looked like, and cinematically, like it just blew all of our minds. And we're away from our families, and we're literally like in the desert. Sometimes it's really hard when you're traveling, especially overseas. But it kind of gave us a little more enthusiasm because it was really challenging, but to see it was like mind blowing.
right. And to also see a movie where, because it seems like nowadays there seems to be kind of a perhaps harsh bias towards action movies that it's just nothing but like,
Yeah.
it's just mindless entertainment. But then you see a movie like Mad Max Fury Road where like there's so much like passion behind each stunt that's performed, and how each shot is how do you say it? How each shot is composed. Like, so it's great to see that a movie like that also gets a lot of critical acclaim in the long run.
Yeah.
Are there any proud memories from any of your experiences, whether it be Mad Max Fury Road or any other stunts that you've done in Hollywood pictures?
Well, I think Mad Max is probably like the number one, just because of all the training that we went through. We were there like a month before the lead actors got there, just to get like the formalities of like the world, and we had to work with acting coaches as well, and we had to look malnourished. They followed us with umbrellas because we couldn't get a tan. Like we couldn't eat. We had there was a crafty and catering for everyone else, and then crafty and catering for us because we had to still be really slim. And yeah, we'd be like, go to the wardrobe. Can you please get us a brownie? We'll give you like. They were really, and the staff knew. They're like, no, I don't want to get fired. I can't give you this brownie. We're like, we're athletes. We know how. Like it was very structured. George Miller, like he knows exactly what he wants. So so that was a very surreal experience. I think one of the most memorable experiences for me was early in my career on Smokin' Aces. And it was one of the first times where it was multiple stunts in one scene. And mine was easy. I had to look like Alicia Keys. So Taraji's character thinks that she's dead, right? So I just have to walk out of the elevator, act like I got shot, and like fall on Ryan Reynolds. But everything else is, this guy his legs is on fire, the chandelier is falling, they have the electric stall, and it's just like all this like just energy, and it was amazing to be in it, but not look amazing, try to stay in character. But that was so cool to me because the director, Joe Carnahan, was like, fuck yeah! He was so excited even before he yelled cut, and I was like, this is incredible. I'm gonna do this for a really long time. I just got chills even thinking about it. But that's another, like, it's just especially when you get the respect from the producers, the director, because it's not always like that. Sometimes we're like, okay, we're doing it again, and they think that we're not human, so that was an amazing experience.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because, it seems like the hard work of stunt performers for a long time was underappreciated and perhaps even taken for granted. But it seems like nowadays, more slowly, there seems to be more and more recognition for stunt performers because, no disrespect, of course, to like the main actors, but, stunt doubles is still acting, it's still performing. So that shouldn't be taken for granted, especially when there are some insane risks that are being taken. I think a good example that comes to mind is when you were a stunt double on the episode of ER, where the entire balcony just collapsed. I mean, like, that's not easy, and it's practical. That's the thing. It's practical.
Yeah.
So, that hard work can't be taken for granted. That deserves respect,
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that it's gotten a little bit better. I mean, even years ago when it's like, oh, so and so's this show is nominated for an Emmy, and it just would be like the little headline on the bottom and no interviews, and that's gotten better. I mean, obviously we still don't have an Academy Award, but there has been through commercials, and this year they did do a segment on stunt performers. It was like a snippet for the Academy Awards, but we were like, but we still don't have one. So I think it's confusing, very frustrating. And for when Mad Max won, I was actually with my hair girl from set, and we were at a restaurant and everybody's watching it live, and they won for hair and makeup. So she's like, oh my God, I got Academy Award. And I'm like, I can't believe it. And all these, like, they show the stunts, on the previews of every, and we have no, like, there's no acclimates at all. And everybody was so impressed at the restaurant, they actually gave her a cake. They made a cake for her. It was like, congratulations on your Academy Award. I was like, I'm not trying to be a hater, but there's something right about this. But
yay.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, that was there too. But yeah, it's just what it is right now. But it has gotten better. You are right.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think maybe there could be or do you think are some ways to maybe improve giving more of a spotlight for stunt performers, not just in terms of movies, but television or theater as well, because there's also stunt performers in theater.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my personal view, I think that the film industry, it's like a kind of like a fantasy to watch these movies, right? So then it's kind of like showing the magician's hand. So if you're watching a film or show or theater and you're in the story and you're like invested in these characters, then it's hard to say, oh, well, they didn't really do it, because it kind of knocks the audience out to like, no. Even, my friends that when they learned that I did stunts, they're like, I never really thought about that, and meanwhile we're going out and I have a big old bruise on my arm from doing a stair fall, and it's very real. But I personally think that they just want the art to be the art, because or else there's every department has opportunities to win awards, and they just kind of throw us to the side, and it's been like that for so many years. And the progression of that, I don't think that is quick enough. It's not quick enough to have made a difference. Like, for us not to have an Academy Award, it's insane.
Right, especially considering stunt work. Stunt work didn't just like blow up even more in the like 2000s going forward. Stunt work, think of like some of the action movies from the 80s and 90s. Of course we love the movie stars, but what about the stunt doubles, that are doing some of those pretty gnarly, like, when we watch it, the audience watches that, we watch and like, how do they do that and not like freak out doing that?
Yeah, well, even if you think about it, back in the 80s, they didn't even have the equipment and the stunt pads,
Right.
what we do now. Even previous is like to be able to do a fight scene or whatever the stunt is, and to be able to shoot it, get it edited, show the director. Then the director can say, you know what, I don't like, them coming from left, let's switch it up. And then we're not doing that on set. So, there's been a lot of changes that helps, I think, for less injuries and, just more safe for us as performers and the coordinators, because they're liable,
Right. I kind of follow up to a question earlier. Do you sometimes think that like the safety of stunt performers is maybe taken for granted? They're like, oh, this is their profession, so therefore they're gonna be okay.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Mm.
A lot of times offset, we're getting acupuncture, going to cryotherapy, getting massages, it's a lot of work just to maintain, because if you're constantly hitting the ground, like literally hitting concrete over and over, it's really
Right.
hard not to get injured, even if you don't have that one big injury. Like our body it's like my chiropractor was like, it's like you're just doing self-induced car accidents. Like every year you're not getting better. So it is like that. That's why I think it's, just being appreciative on set,
Hmm.
I think is helpful. But beyond that, it kind of is what it is, because we're choosing to do that. But at the same time, when we're doing something over and over, and some directors, they just want that perfect shot, and sometimes it's not even obtainable. So there are some sets that are ran like that, which is really unfortunate. But it's their vision, it's the director's vision, and
Hmm.
they're like, hey, there's some performer, and if so and so gets hurt, who's the next one in line? Literally.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like just to think of a couple off the top of my head, there's the building scene in Spider-Man 3 where obviously there's CG add-ons, but then there's also like the set literally you have props going all over the place, and then you have the set literally tilting sideways, and you're trying to run up that. Like that can't be easy. Or
Yeah.
another one that comes to mind is in the opening of Straight Outta Compton during the police raid. That
Yeah.
I mean that must have been pain in the ass to film that sequence. I mean, even some moments in Mall Cop, like Paul Blart Mall Cop, some moments in that look like it had to hurt.
Well, not really, because it was parkour, and I was very comfortable with what we were rehearsing. Um, Spider-Man 3, I think that it's funny that you talk about, as performers, we are performing, because, in the set, went on that 30-degree angle, and we're running up. I remember the coordinator was like, hey, this is not your movie. You're not the superstar. Don't act so athletic. I'm like, oh, okay. Like more damsel in distress, right? Yes, yes. Like you're just average, So sometimes we forget too, because we are athletic, but when we're playing ourselves, we still have to be the character and maybe not be so, athletic looking. But Straight Outta Compton, it was really fun, because my friend who's now a director, Lynn Oding, he was stunt coordinating, and I knew F. Gary Gray from before, and every time I would get hit by the battering ram, he would literally get out as his director, come in his director chair, come and say, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And Lynn's like, "She's stunts. She's good. She's fine." Like, and I'm like, "Lynn, let me get a little bit of love here, But at the rap party, it was at Dr. Dre's house, and he came up to me and he was like, "I just want you to know you did a really good job." And every time we saw it, we were like cringing, like you did exactly what we wanted you to do. So those things, like I would never forget. It's just the appreciation of it.
Of course. Yeah. And hard work like that deserves appreciation. Hard work like that shouldn't be taken for granted, because like you said, it's adding to the art. It's like a piece of a puzzle that's necessary in order to complete the full picture.
Yeah.
And also the great thing about having a career in stunt works is that there's like a variety of genres that you're able to do stunt work in. There is of course action movies, but it's ironic I think people overlook this, is that there's also a lot of comedies that use stunt work as well.
Yeah.
I remember, wasn't there like a McDonald's commercial that you did where you were playing, were you
Yes.
playing it like
Yeah.
a martial arts grandmother?
Yeah. 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 For the McGriddles. That was actually one of my first big jobs, my first commercial. Yeah, that was really that was a lot of fun.
Mhm.
Yeah. The a lot of the comedies, they're fun to do because it's like, it's a fall, but like what you were saying again, performing, sometimes it's a little tricky because when you fall, you can't make it seem like you like fell and hurt yourself. You have to make the audience laugh, so you have to do it in a way that's bigger, and then you get up right away or whatever. But it's like the comedy in your performance is like a whole nother thing too than action films.
Right. And early on, a lot of comedy was built on specifically physical performance. Before sound came into the picture in filmmaking, a lot of comedy had to be
Mhm.
based solely on, I mean, look back, think of like the work of Buster Keaton, for example. Obviously you have your dialogue subtitle cards, but a lot of that is solely based on the physicality of what Buster Keaton is doing in those movies.
Right, right. Or like I Love Lucy. That was a she did a that was a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I Love
Yeah.
Lucy is another, that's good. That's another good example. And regarding comedies, an early acting role of yours was appearing in the comedy film Paul Blart Mall Cop, starring Kevin James, where you played one of the villains named Vixen. Ironically named, all the villains were named after reindeer.
Yeah.
Um, that part gave you the task of both acting in a role and also doing, stunts. So what was that test like for you, having, to take on a role, even if it was like a smaller role, take on a role while also doing, the parkour stunt work?
Well, I love being able to do both. I think it brings the character like to another level of life because if you think of even whatever action they're doing, it goes into the backstory of why they have this expertise. And if I'm doubling someone, I'm like stalking their movements. You go on set because you're like, okay, how do they walk? What's their posture like? So to be able to not have to do that and play myself and just fall upon like what the work that I've done as the character is
Mhm.
really, I think it's very special. And also for the production to trust that we're able to deliver both. Um,
Mhm.
for Mall Cop, it was a little bit different for me because they like the guys would be doing tricks on the bike and they do, and then when I would go and play, they're like, no, no, we don't want you to get hurt. No, 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 don't do no, and there's a picture when I'm like sliding down an elevator. And the on-set photographer just happened to do it. It wasn't a part of the film, but yeah, they were like, no, 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 we want you to get off. So sometimes they don't want you to get hurt because then it's going to really be difficult for them to shoot, having cast on and then you're playing the character. So, it's a lot of liability. It's a lot of liability for them too. But I think more and more now, I think productions are getting used to stunt performers that can act and are actually actors, have agents, training. I think that they're becoming a little bit more comfortable. It was like that too when I did I don't know if you saw this. He might be mad or laughing, but it's Afro Ninja, but Mark Hicks, who was one of my mentors, he was on the set one on one. But he did a backflip, and it was an
Mhm.
audition, and the audition leaked.
Yes,
You know?
yes. I've seen that. That's a classic internet video. That's an
Yeah,
iconic video.
yeah, it's so funny because we were when on Mad Max, Charlize had a dinner and we were
Uh-huh.
just talking about videos, and she was like, "Have you seen the video of it?" And I was like, "Oh my god, that's Mark." I had to call him. I said, "Well, Charlize thinks you're funny, but yeah, he's an amazing martial artist and gymnast. He just opened up to it, like put in the colors on the wall or whatever that completely felt. So it was a big thing. I think Jay Leno and all these people were talking about it. He was so embarrassed, so he decided to make a movie. So I was his co-star, and he named it Afro Ninja, and he was the same way. He did not. I'm like, let me just do a flip off of the rail. He's like, no, I need you for the whole movie. I just need you not to get hurt. So sometimes it kind of doesn't work in the favor because they're nervous about that.
And it's ironic that you say that because in Mall Cop, your character does get hurt. Your character's the first villain to get defeated by Kevin James' character. I know. What was that like working with Kevin James? Because, this was a pretty big Hollywood breakthrough for you, and you're working now alongside a big comedy star.
You have some actors, I think, that are always on. Jamie Foxx, I think, was like that when I worked with him on Power. And it's like in hair and makeup on set, they're just like, they're just all, it's like they're always like on their comedic stage. Kevin wasn't like that. He was constantly like going over the rewrites. He was on his computer. He was very serious. And I think because this was like his first leading role in a film, it was a really big opportunity for him. So I think that he was just really focused. There was a time I wasn't running the drone, but they were like flying some kind of plane because there's so much downtime on set. And they were flying, and then he was practicing, being on the Segway, and like hit him in the head.
That's right, and he had to do his own stunts, which is crazy.
He did have stunt doubles, but
no, yeah, of course, but there was still some participation in the action.
Yeah, riding a Segway and still being able to make a character and making it look like you're comfortable going back and forth. Totally, yeah, he did.
Or the wire, or I think another example is the wire work when the one villain, when there's a pretty popular behind the scenes photo of him and one of the villains when they're on, they're being held by wires. It's the moment when they fall through the glass ceiling.
Oh, yeah. It was in the vault, I think. Yeah.
Was Kevin also the same way with also making sure that you didn't get hurt? Because, you do have a comedic scene with him after he defeats you in that movie.
Yeah, but I think he was just really focused on the film. He was very apologetic when he had to lift me up and like throw me in the closet. I was like, you can throw me, and they made all cushions. Like that was nothing. I think anybody could have done that, but he definitely was. He acted like it was a very fragile time, but he got it. He got it going on. So,
all right, great. And it also must have been fun for you because pretty much the majority of the villains in that movie are doing all of these wild stunts. Perfect example is I can't remember the actor's name. He's the one who has the beanie on. He does some of the arguably some of the gnarliest stunts in that movie.
Yes. Yeah, I remember he was really good. He had a radio show that he was doing at the time. So there are a lot of times where he had to go back to his trailer and do the radio show. But all of the guys were all the guys were so talented. And Mike Escahiela, he actually still does stunts, but they did it all. It was so fun for them. It was like being in a playground,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was really fun.
Awesome. And I assume was that like considering that was a big major Hollywood role where you also got to be part of the cast, not just doing stunts but also being part of the cast. Did that like also kind of serve as like a motivator to pursue more acting roles going forward? Like more focus on also getting acting roles besides just doing stunt doubles?
Well, absolutely. But when you're doing, I never stopped pursuing acting, but the problem is, what happened with me is that I started working so much. I was just such an average size, not too tall, not too thick, not too skinny. So I was able to double a lot of actresses like immediately. And so I would get a call and be like, oh, we need you to come here for 3 months. I want you to come here for 3. So what happens is you lose your agents. Well, that's what happened with me. So I lost 2 or 3 agents because they're like, you're never available. And I was still doing my acting classes and I did what I could, but that's the hard part of balancing off if you're like a full-on working stunt performer because you're not available. And a lot of times your runs are months long and you're
Mm.
out of LA. So I never stopped. I mean, even with Mall Cop, I had to audition a couple of times. But no, definitely it fueled the fuel. Like I love doing this for sure.
Of course, and why have, why limit uh what you're capable of in the medium of film and television, There's so much that you can do.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, regarding acting, this is a good segue. Perhaps, arguably, what has become one of, if not your most popular acting role, was starring as the character Laura Matsuda in the series Street Fighter Resurrection, based on the popular video game franchise Street Fighter. Now, before talking about your character in the series and basically, what it was like working at, how familiar were you with the Street Fighter franchise beforehand?
I was familiar because it was kind of like the battle between Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. And
Right.
and like the arcades like in the 80s and stuff. So when I got the call, I was like, I didn't even think it was really real. You know what I mean? Because it's a dream to play a superhero like that, and it just yeah, that was really cool. I was familiar, but obviously I had to do a lot more research when I learned that I got the offer.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
But it must have been like a huge surprise when you learned that when they, it's a Street Fighter audition, but it doesn't just have Street Fighter, because, plenty of things also can have Street Fighter in the title. It was the Street Fighter franchise series.
Yeah.
And this wasn't actually the same team behind this. They had worked on some other series beforehand. Did you watch those
Oh
as
yeah.
like a way of like to get yourself prepared for like what the overall direction would be like for Resurrection?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I watched those. I started training immediately with Christian Howard, who plays Ken, and
Mhm.
I mean, I got the offer, and we were shooting in the UK like 3 weeks later, so I didn't have a lot of preparation time. Um,
Mhm.
so Christian and we started doing BJJ together, and just kind of getting familiar with like our bodies and our body weight, and you know. And then when we got to the UK, it's like all the guys got to, have off time and have fun. And they're like, Christian, Natascha, you gotta go. We trained at the Gracie Academy. I
Mm.
trained here, the one out in Torrance, and then we trained at one of the Gracie Academies in the UK. So it was really challenging for me because, my background as a gymnast, I can flip and I can fight, but that's a little bit different. But it's so great for women because even though you might weigh less, you're using the opponent's body, in your favor. And so with the headlocks, and it was really incredible. It was challenging. It was a good challenge. And our director Joey, he's another director specifically. He knew exactly what he wanted, and he was very patient. And we had a lot of calls before I got to the UK to shoot about the character, about her dialect, and the look of it, it's kind of intimidating, because I'm looking at all
Yeah.
these pictures and I'm like, oh, and they're like, okay, obviously you're gonna have a custom wardrobe, and I was like, oh, I gotta see if I can get some abs real quick. It was, you're fitting into already a built-in audience with high expectations. So that was a special project for me too.
Right. And it's interesting that you bring up, this character looks intimidating because regarding the character of Laura Matsuda is that, you look at this character initially and she does have a very like intimidating, appearance to her, like an appearance of like someone you don't want to get on her bad side with. But but what's also cool about the role is like the more that you get to see Laura interact with like Ken and Ryu in the series is that you do see a more human side to this character. You see a very humane, respectful side. I mean, perfect example. There's a great little touch is when your character first meets Ryu, and the first thing you to do is give each other a bow.
Yeah, the
Um,
respect.
and that must have been great to really like because now it was a leading role for you, because now you're one of the leads in the series. It must have felt, did you feel like in a way that was a moment where like your ambition of wanting to do more acting really like came full circle for you in a way?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, just the cast alone, they were they're so great and so experienced, especially in their martial arts. Because the thing is, even Kristen Durden was she like they're all legit martial artists, and it's
Right.
different from being a gymnast who is learning, different martial arts. So it was, but they were so great. They were so great. I felt in the beginning I was like the weakest link. I was very intimidated, but then after we started going through training and then I was like, okay, I was cast for a reason, and now I'm gonna bring it. But yeah, it kind of was a moment of like, okay, you're here, you gotta perform, you gotta be confident, you gotta do it.
Right. It was like you were able to have a great balance of impressive fight choreography, but also the freedom to act and become the character.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and now you are the live action Laura Matsuda of the Street Fighter franchise. Like that's pretty that's quite an accomplishment. The same way that like Mike Moe is now like seen as the live action Ryu.
Yeah, yeah, and Christian too. I mean, he still has a lot of fans, and then he grew his hair out recently, and we're like, "You're a real kid now. Look at you!" But all of us, it's kind of surreal. It's cool.
Awesome. Now, of course, you also have distanced yourself from stunt work to focus more on acting as well, where like acting is the sole focus as opposed to stunt work. And a role that comes to mind is the sci-fi noir short Departure, another work that you have a lead role in, which deals with themes of existential crisis and issues such as racism. Was that like also kind of like a something that really, that role in particular, make you want to also pursue just solely acting as opposed to just always having the responsibilities of stunts as well?
Yeah, I that's a really great question. Um, I do love that because I journal, when I'm working, as far as my character, and to be able to solely just dive into and not in the back of my mind saying, okay, I have an 8 beat fight here, I have to hit my mark here, I have to, so, and I think in the beginning of my career, I really loved to do that. I couldn't wait to, you know, do a body burn, and
Mm-hmm.
I even set my arm on fire at a friend's house. They had the whole setup, everybody were certified and everything, but I just wanted to do that. I wasn't even working. It's just strange. Like you just have this urge to just do it,
You need the adrenaline. You need that
yeah,
adrenaline.
yeah. So it's in my younger years, I really had the urge to do it. Now that I'm a little bit older, I really like the work of filmmaking, and it doesn't always have to include action. So to answer this a long-winded way of saying, yeah, I do prefer now more just straight acting, especially drama, and I don't have to do the stunt. If I had a role to where there was stunts, I definitely would be like, okay, let's get a stunt double.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you've kind of shifted your focus, and I'm happy for you, and I hope you can get more roles like that going forward.
Thank
Uh,
you.
of course. And funny enough, you did have a brief role that was a dramatic role, and it did have a stunt, but it was also more, the role emphasized kind of what the show was talking about, is when you appeared on an episode of the hit series Snowfall, which deals with the drug epidemic in Los Angeles during the 1980s. And in that very brief role in that episode, there is a stunt that is performed, but it's more it's more what's being emphasized in that scene, just kind of hammering in just the drug epidemic that was going on in LA at the time. And also just it's there's quite chilling shot when the cop is looking at you as your character is, kind of, just in it. And like it really it's very brief, but like it really hammers in the theme of what the show is addressing. So like that must have been rewarding, even for something, as small as that.
Yeah, I mean, it was it was one of the first scenes of the season. So that, again, that's a little bit of pressure. But when I auditioned, I didn't think that I really thought about that. But the director he was so great. He was very meticulous. Even
Mhm.
with the pipe, I was like, well, maybe I should just take it home for a couple days and practice, I guess. So I literally was like laying on my floor just practicing, because if somebody has a habit like that, like they can't wait to smoke it. They can't. They think that that's their lifeline. It's just
Right.
all this desperation. So
It's
that was
heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
yeah, it is, because it's a reflection of a lot of people's reality. And, for the cop looking down, he's like, this is my community, and how are we going to stop this? And literally somebody willing to like dive in a car and move, like that's, what I mean? But yeah, that was, I really enjoyed that too. I do love dramas. I love
Hmm.
dramas.
Absolutely. And you also got to really emphasize facial expressions in that particular scene, but also, just the look of the character. Like even with this character that were just introduced at the beginning of the season, we see her and how she's acting, and we already there's so much that the audience is already being told about her. And
Yeah,
a lot of it is based solely on like facial expressions and, just very little subtle movements. So
yeah.
great job there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are you interested, kind of redundant question, are you interested in doing more dramatic roles such as the ones I mentioned going forward?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I get auditions now, I'm a lot more specific in the ones that I want to audition for, because I mean, first of all, you audition and we call it goes into like this it's the actors access like ecosystem. It just like goes into the universe, because a lot of times we don't get feedback, and then you see who booked the role.
Mhm.
So if I feel like I'm not going to be in love with the character and like eat, breathe, sleep the character, I just don't audition anymore. And unfortunately, it's probably like 75% of the auditions that come in, I just won't audition. And it's a lot, you know what I mean? I have a private acting coach. It's like now the majority of everything is on tape, and it's a lot of work for auditions. But now that I'm producing and doing other things, I feel like I can give opportunities to other people.
Mhm. It
You know,
must feel just as empowering as like when you said the adrenaline rush from doing stunts. It must feel just as empowering now doing all these other things.
yeah, it really is, because you're telling a story, but you're telling a story through other people. And as long as you guys have the conversations and you're casting the right people, the story is still being told. I produced a short film called Perspectives. A good friend of mine directed and wrote it, and we hired Christian, and he loved it because it was a rom-com. And I was
Hmm.
like, look at him being good in a rom-com. And even for him it was good, because he's like, with my reel I have so much action, but this helps him get other roles, not doing action. So that part is kind of my new adrenaline rush, being able to hire on talent that I've worked with before, work with other producers.
Hmm. And does that also like maybe in term of that like include like pursuing more indie projects?
Yeah, I mean, as an independent producer right now, yes. Um, it's it's kind of funny because being in the industry for so long, for stunts is like we all know each other, and a lot of us now are second unit directing or stunt coordinating. You know, it's the growth after like 15 years. You know, so it's nice to just get a call and be like, "Hey, we're gonna do this. Do you want to work?" You know, so it's really nice to be able, like, I'm honored to be able to be in that position now, but being on the other side, and I studied during COVID. I took UCLA Extension is amazing. I took 7 courses. I took 3 directing, 3 producing, 1 cinematography class. And I was like, okay, now this is going to be my new zone. But it's also like I'm starting over. So now, you know, in the stunts, I've kind of hit my ceiling, my personal ceiling I hit. And so now I'm kind of starting over. But I think when you have worked on set so many hours and you kind of know the way the set is ran, and then I also know how I'm gonna run my sets and really be kind and great to the stunt performers, you know, because sometimes you will be on set and they don't have chairs for us, and we're like, this is so crazy. Like, I'm literally gonna be falling out the cars, falling down the stairs, and there's not an area, you know, for stunt people to actually sit down. So a lot of us could just be on mats, stretching, or just standing up, you know. That has gotten better, but I feel like my contribution is just going to be in a different way now.
Okay. And career-wise, you're, like you mentioned, you're also super proactive outside of stunt performance and acting. Would you like to go into that? I know you mentioned producing.
Oh yeah, I have 2 projects. One is a psychological thriller, which is really cool. I'm working with Frankie Films on that. And then I have a show that I created. It's a 1 hour drama. And I just produced a music video. It's more like a short film. It's called Like Damn. And I mean, it's a whole, you know, stunt fight sequence. It's very unique. So I'm excited about all those projects and perspectives. We've won, I think, about 7 short film awards, so it's going really good. So that it might have an opportunity to be able to go into a series.
Awesome. Well, Natascha, thank you so much for taking the opportunity to do this interview.
Thank you. It was fun.
Of course. And for all the listeners and viewers out there, a lot of Natascha Hopkins' work is available, including Mad Max Fury Road, which is available on DVD, Blu-ray, streaming. Paul Blart Mall Cop, available on DVD, Blu-ray, streaming. The short film she starred in, Departure, is available to watch online, as well as Street Fighter Resurrection. And of course, Straight Outta Compton is available on DVD, Blu-ray, and streaming services. All right, Natascha, well, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much to everyone tuning in, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.